A mystery that cannot be explained. An enigma that defies reason. A surprising and unexpected answer. To encounter such a mystery firsthand may change your life forever. Face to face with the greatest riddles of the ages, the world's most profound mysteries reach out and touch your life in ways you never imagined possible. Extreme Mysteries.
Could it be that after thousands of years, the biblical story of the great deluge is about to be confirmed? Much of what we commonly know about the story of Noah is found here in the book of Genesis in the Bible. But in light of what we now know, is a worldwide flood a real possibility? Does the geology of the world as we know it today support or refute the idea of a global flood? And where did all that water come from? Could just 40 days and 40 nights of rain have been enough to submerge the world's tallest peaks? Could there be more to the scriptural definition of the firmament above and the firmament below than we realize? Some surprising answers emerge when we come back. We've all heard the story. Noah and his family, which consisted of his wife, 3 sons, and their wives, was a righteous family in a world filled with wickedness. The Bible tells us God spoke directly to Noah and told him he was about to destroy every living thing off the face of the earth. Only Noah, his family, and the birds and animals are to be spared. But when scientists have gone digging for facts about the Great Flood, some surprising things turn up.
In all the cultures I've studied, the story of Noah and the flood are practically identical in all different sorts of ancient languages, whether it's Persian, Babylonian, ancient Egyptian, Chinese, Sanskrit. The only thing that changes occasionally is the name of Noah. Not only does it appear in the Christian Bible, but also in the Quran, the Bible of Islam. There it tells the story of Noah, or Nuh in Arabic, who escapes the flood in an ark with his family.
These accounts certainly help support the Noah story, but is there any archaeological evidence to back up the stories?
The flood account is found on Babylonian, Akkadian, and Sumerian cuneiform tablets, which are now found in the British Museum. These date back to about 700 BC, but there are older accounts of the flood found in individual Chinese characters. Now, these Chinese characters really date back a long time. And we find the most ancient forms of Chinese character in bronzeware vessels. These are ceremonial vessels, and the writing is found inscribed inside of the vessels.
Contrary to the critics, there does seem to be historical evidence of both Noah and the flood. 272 mentions, to be exact, in every civilization and culture around the world, including the Aztec and Inca cultures. What, if anything, does modern science tell us such a catastrophe might have done or would have done to the planet Earth once the rain stopped falling?
Do you see?
At long last.
Could it be that answers were actually found here by one of the Defense Department's major research and development laboratories?
We can see on our planet 17 very strange features which can now be systematically explained. as a result of a cataclysmic global flood whose waters erupted from subterranean chambers with an energy release exceeding the explosion of 10 billion hydrogen bombs. This explanation shows us just how rapidly major mountains formed. It explains the coal and oil deposits, the rapid continental drift, why on the ocean floor there are huge trenches and hundreds of canyons and volcanoes. It explains the formation of the layered strata and most of the fossils of the frozen mammoths, the so-called ice ages, and major land canyons, especially the Grand Canyon. The pre-flood Earth probably had only one very large supercontinent covered with lush vegetation. There were seas and major rivers. The mountains were smaller than today's, but perhaps 9,000 feet high. According to the hydroplate theory, the pre-flood Earth had a lot of subterranean water, about half of what is now in our oceans. This water was contained in interconnected chambers, forming a thin spherical shell about half a mile thick, perhaps 10 miles below the Earth's surface. Increasing pressure in the subterranean water stretched the crust just as a balloon stretches when the pressure inside increases. Failure in the crust began with a microscopic crack which grew in both directions at about 3 miles per second. The crack, following the path of least resistance, encircled the globe in about 2 hours. As the crack raced around the Earth, the overlying rock crust opened up like a rip in a tightly stretched cloth. The subterranean water was under extreme pressure because of the weight of the 10 miles of rock pressing down on it. So the water exploded violently out of the rupture. All along this globe-encircling rupture, fountains of water jetted supersonically almost 20 miles into the atmosphere. The spray from this enormous fountain produced torrential rains, such as the earth has never experienced before or after. The Bible states that all the fountains of the great deep burst open on one day. And it describes these events about 5,000 years ago, which we can now tie together scientifically. Some of the water jetting high above the cold stratosphere froze into supercooled ice crystals, producing some massive ice dumps, burying, suffocating, and instantly freezing many animals, including the frozen mammoths of Siberia and Alaska. The high-pressure fountains eroded the rock on both sides of the crack, producing huge volumes of sediments that settled out of this muddy water all over the earth. These sediments trapped and buried plants and animals, forming the fossil record. This erosion widened the rupture. Eventually, the width was so great that the compressed rock beneath the subterranean chamber sprung upward, giving birth to the mid-oceanic ridge that wraps around the earth like the seam of a baseball. The continental plates, the hydroplates, still with lubricating water beneath them, slid downhill away from the rising mid-Atlantic ridge. After the massive, slowly accelerating continental plates reached speeds of about 45 miles per hour, they ran into resistances, compressed and buckled. The portions of the hydroplate that buckled downward formed ocean trenches. Those that buckled upward formed mountains. This is why the major mountain chains are parallel to the oceanic ridges from which they slid. The hydroplates, in sliding away from the oceanic ridges, opened up very deep ocean basins into which the floodwaters retreated. On the continents, each bowl-shaped depression or basin was naturally left brimful of water, producing many post-flood lakes.
This illustration of a massive worldwide catastrophe in antiquity does support the biblical story of the deluge in every detail. But if major government agencies have developed these theories, what else might they know? Is there evidence of any government's involvement in the search for Noah's Ark? Satellites have mapped the globe with cameras of unbelievable clarity and resolution. Can Mount Ararat have escaped these lenses? And what of the rest of the Noah's Ark story? A book long removed from the biblical canon tells us the body of Adam was taken aboard the ark. Has it been found? Surprisingly, the world's governments have, by and large, taken a somewhat benign view of the search for Noah's Ark. In spite of dozens of expeditions over the past 200 years, there have been few official efforts to find what many believe to be the cradle of mankind. In 1916, however, an event occurred that resulted in a full-fledged government expedition to Mount Ararat. Shortly after World War I, a Russian pilot, Lieutenant Robolsky, told his remarkable story of sighting the Ark.
I was stationed with a small group of aviators about 25 miles northeast of Mount Ararat. A new high-altitude engine had been installed in one of the planes, and I was sent up for test flight. When I circled the mountain, I spotted a dark structure there. Huge, something the size of a battleship. It was a strange-looking craft, but quite clearly a boat with a rounded-over top.
News of Lieutenant Robolsky's sighting reached Tsar Nicholas himself. In 1917, the Tsar dispatched 2 companies of soldiers to locate and document this extraordinary find. The soldiers found and measured the Ark. They also made a photographic record of the great ship. But unfortunately, all of this was taking place just as the Communist Revolution was breaking out at home. As a result, reports and photos of this expedition have yet to be found. They are presumed lost or hidden in some secret Kremlin vault. They were, however, seen.
There's been controversy about whether or not there ever was a Russian expedition or an Ark sighting around the time of 1916 or 1917. Our author spent 20 years researching Anastasia, the last surviving member of the Russian royal family. During one of his personal conversations with her, he was shocked when she started to talk about an expedition which her father, the Tsar, had commissioned to go to Mount Ararat and measure and photograph Noah's Ark. She told him she'd actually seen the photographs and the report from the expedition. She also told him she'd worn a cross made from the wood of Noah's Ark.
If in fact those records and photographs still exist, their discovery would perhaps answer many of the questions still remaining about the Ark. But can they be found? American pilots stationed near Mount Ararat during World War II apparently sighted the Ark as well, but the U.S. government's response was quite different.
In 1948, I saw a 35mm film of Noah's Ark taken by military aircraft fly over Mount Ararat. On the film, I saw a long cigar-shaped vessel which was dark in contrast to the surrounding ice lake.
The official response of both military and civilian leaders in the U.S. has been to simply ignore these reports, as well as more recent reports of satellite imagery. Repeated requests through the Freedom of Information Act have so far proven fruitless. Why? Could it be that they already know what's there?
And there at the Strategic Air Command are secret documents right now which have pictures of Noah's Ark. They're even labeled Noah's Ark on the picture.
In the mid-1990s, I worked on a top-secret government contract. During that time, I spoke with a man who used government assets and imaging equipment to search for Noah's Ark on Mount Ararat in 1974. The mission was probably instigated by the CIA director who had recently spoken with an Ark researcher.
We know our government has photos and satellite imagery of that area of Noah's Ark. However, they probably won't want to release that because when they do, they'll also disclose just how good our spy technology has become.
That might be one reason to withhold the photographs and images, but could there be another reason? Could it be that there's more than just the Ark itself to be concerned about? A former employee of the Smithsonian thinks there is. However, we should point out that both the Smithsonian and the National Geographic deny the story that follows.
Well, I was working at the Smithsonian Institute in the vertebrate paleontology section, and I saw my immediate supervisor with a visiting scientist, and they were both bent over a viewer looking at some photographs. She told me, well, take a look, and what I saw was an oblong object resembling a ship which wasn't under the ice but semi-covered with it. It was broken in the middle, or it appeared to me to be broken, and one end was definitely smashed. He told me that this had been taken on a mountain named Ararat in Turkey. There were some boxes and crates on the loading dock, and he mentioned to me, okay, that these were from Ararat and these were going into his section, which was physical anthropology. One of these was a oblong sarcophagus-like thing that I was told later, was made out of alabaster.
Again, we want to make it clear that both the Smithsonian and the National Geographic deny ever conducting such an expedition or funding expeditions for others. One thing is certain, the alabaster coffin is nowhere to be seen at the Smithsonian. But there is an interesting sidelight to this story.
In the Apocrypha book of Eden, now Apocrypha books are those books that did not get in the Bible because they were not considered divinely inspired, it says that Noah was instructed by Adam's son Jared to take Adam's body aboard the ark. In another verse, it clearly implies that Noah is to leave Adam's body on the ark, and a third verse clearly states that gold, myrrh, and incense is to be left with Adam's body as an offering to God. There is definitely strong evidence that Adam's body was taken aboard Noah's Ark, and equally strong evidence from eyewitnesses in Turkey that the Smithsonian Institution and National Geographic Society conducted an expedition in the 1960s which covered it for further analysis in Washington, D.C.
Could it be that the Smithsonian and the government have more information about Noah's Ark than they are willing to share? Recent requests for satellite imagery of Mount Ararat or aerial imagery of Mount Ararat or records of the Mount Ararat Anomaly Project have all been denied. Requests for non-photographic documentation is under review. In the meantime, there are living eyewitnesses who are willing to share their experiences.
He said he had a great uncle that knew where the ark was, and his great uncle was going to take us up to it. So I was kind of exciting, you know. Boy, I'm on an adventure. Mustafa's great uncle. He just took us right up the side of this mountain, and we were going around rocks and above cliffs and below cliffs. It was like a trail. You know, he was like a guide. He knew exactly where he was going. And I'm tired and I'm winded, and it's, oh boy, when is this ever going to end? When are we going to see the ark? If we don't see it pretty soon, I want to go back. His uncle turns around and laughs at me, and he points down. And then all of a sudden you look down, and here's this huge, awesome ship sitting below you in this fog. You know, it's almost like a, you know, you picture a dream, and there it is.
Ed Davis befriended a young man while stationed in Turkey during World War II. In return, the young man agreed to show him Noah's Ark.
At that particular time, you couldn't see the ark. When you got where you could see it, he would come back and get me. I thought, well, that... But a couple of months later, he come back. He said, we can see it, let's go. We were all tied together, about 20 feet apart with a big rope. I was never as cold, as wet, as hungry, as sleepy in my life as I was when I got up there. They was trying to show me the ark. When I was standing, it looked like a big piece of blue rock. And then we moved back, and then we could see in the end of it. It was awesome. You knew somebody was watching you. There was something going on. I don't know how to explain that feeling, but you knew someone or something. Well, it was just a mighty power someplace there present.
Dr. Ahmet Ali Arslan is a Washington correspondent for a major Turkish newspaper, but he knows Mount Ararat like few men do.
I grew up there, and I climbed more than 50 times to the summit of Mount Ararat. In 1989, and I climbed the northern part of Mount Ararat and upper side of Ahora Gorge. I went to check a certain area which had been shown in a satellite photo as a possible location of Noah's Ark. I noticed 100 or 200 feet away there was building type of structure, definitely made of wood. It almost looked like a captain's cabin. It shouldn't be there. My belief is that what I saw and what I took in my photographs definitely, without question, is Noah's Ark.
In the mid-1950s, the mountain finally gave up its first physical clues of the 20th century. It was to be the beginning of a series of modern-day efforts to pinpoint the secret whereabouts of Noah's Ark. A French demolition engineer named Fernand Navarra became interested in the Ark while serving in the military. Navarra began the first of a series of expeditions to Mount Ararat in 1952.
My Kurdish guides had abandoned me at the lower level of the mountain, and so I tried my best to proceed on my own. I was not able to find the ark exposed, but I did see a massive dark shape frozen under the glacier ice. I knew then I would have to return to discover what it could be.
He returned in July of '55, accompanied by his young son, Raphael. What we see here is actual footage filmed by Fernand Navarra and his son during their expedition.
1955 was a warm year with the great glacial meltback. I know if I had a chance to reach the ark, it would be now.
It was Raphael who first spotted something. Navarra carefully lowered himself deep into a crevice at the 13,500 foot level.
The wood was easy to see, but was frozen into the ice. Still then, I had no idea how big it was.
What Navarra chopped from the ice was a 5-foot, hand-hewn wooden beam.
I had dreamed of this. Raphael and I were excited like it was Christmas time.
A proud moment and fulfillment of a long-held wish. But was this actually wood from Noah's Ark? It was determined that the type of wood Navarra found does not grow near Mount Ararat. As a matter of fact, there's not a forest within 300 miles of the mountain. Navarra had the wood tested in 3 different laboratories. He was told its age was around 5,000 years, clearly in line with the biblical account of the flood. The scientific test proved beyond question that something very old, something very mysterious, was definitely on Mount Ararat. Those who believe that the Bible is a book of historical truth will more easily accept the possibility of the ark being on Mount Ararat. Those who believe that the Bible is a book of fiction perhaps will remain skeptical even in the face of the most conclusive proof. But there is another group, those who have said they have been there and seen the great ship.
It was awesome.
What I saw is Noah's Ark.
Of course, our mystery would be solved if the Defense Department and NASA would simply release the satellite imagery and surveillance photographs that have been taken over the past 50 years, but that doesn't seem likely. In the meantime, the search goes on. Many highly respected Ark explorers are expected to mount expeditions if and when the Turkish government reopens the mountain to research and climbing. And if you have a flair for adventure, a group calling themselves the Noah's Ark Alliance has posted a $1 million reward for the discovery of Noah's Ark and confirmation of its present existence. A number of explorers, scientists, and just plain ordinary men claim to have already encountered the great ship that saved mankind. But there are still many aspects of the story that remain unexplained. Like, if there is an alabaster coffin in the Smithsonian, who is in it?